Congratulations, you are officially a bioweapon. Forget the word dinosaur. Forget the very concept of an animal. Animals have ecological niches, survival instincts, and a place in the balance of nature. You have none of those things. You are an engineered killing machine. You were hatched in a cage in the basement of an estate, created by scientists who treated you like property, trained by mercenaries who despised you, and destined to be auctioned off to the highest bidder. Nobody ever showed you kindness. Nobody ever showed you compassion. And the absolute worst part, you are far too intelligent. You carry the cognitive capacity of a primate fused with the broken cortex of a psychopath. You are smart enough to understand the weight of your own isolation, smart enough to feel the absence of a pack, and smart enough to mourn a life you were never allowed to have. Welcome to the nightmare of being the Indoraptor. Act 1. Born from failure. Your story begins before you even existed, and it starts in the gutter. Your mother, the Indominus Rex, was the single greatest genetic mistake in the history of Jurassic World. She escaped her enclosure, butchered everything in her path for the pure thrill of the chaos, and ended her spree in the most humiliating way possible, dragged into the suffocating dark of a lagoon and torn apart by a mosasaurus. Years later, Eli Mills dispatched a team of deep-sea divers into that aquatic grave. All that remained was a single, decaying bone fragment. And Dr. Henry Wu used that rotting marrow to engineer you. You weren't born out of scientific wonder or noble ambition. You were manufactured from a dead bone salvaged from a murky pit to keep an illegal military contract alive. You are, quite literally, the offspring of a colossal failure and a corporate syndicate. Act 2. Raised in darkness. You have never seen real sunlight. You've never felt wind against your skin. Your feet have never touched actual grass. Your world consists entirely of cold concrete and rusted iron. You have never encountered a single living soul that wasn't there to hurt you, test you, or use you as a lab rat. Your incubator sat in a subterranean bunker beneath the Lockwood estate, a place so gothic and oppressive that the director actively drew inspiration from Frankenstein to build your environment. Cold, sterile, hidden from the world. A solitary cell at the dead end of a long, dark corridor. Scientists and mercenaries didn't raise you. They programmed you to kill using aggressive behavioral conditioning. A laser sight locked onto a target, backed by a high-frequency acoustic pulse, drove you into a state of pure, unadulterated frenzy. That wasn't training. That was mind control. You weren't taught to obey. You were manipulated to attack. And between training sessions, you were hit with shock batons by the guards. You can actually see the physical scars in the auction sequence. In fact, original concept art for the film featured scenes of brutal daily abuse, sequences that were ultimately cut because the producers deemed them too dark. Think about that. Your entire origin story was deemed too dark for a horror movie featuring you. Act 3. Blue's broken mirror. Here is the detail that cuts deeper than any shock baton. Blue, the last surviving velociraptor, shares a massive portion of your genetic blueprint. She was synthesized in the exact same lab, engineered by the very same Dr. Henry Wu. On paper, you two should have been identical, but reality was cruelly different. Blue was raised with affection. Owen Grady spent years building trust with her, looking her in the eyes and respecting her instincts. Because of that, Blue developed empathy, loyalty, and genuine emotional bonds. You were raised with trauma, solitary confinement, electric shocks, and murder programming. Dr. Wu knew this. He desperately needed Blue's blood to refine your genome, to build a second iteration of you that could actually imprint on a handler and obey orders. Without Blue, you were nothing more than a malfunctioning prototype, brilliant in body, completely shattered in mind. You and Blue are the exact same experiment with polar opposite results. The only variable was how you were treated. This isn't just sci-fi fiction, it's an autopsy on what trauma does to a living mind. Act 4. Not even a finished product. And speaking of failure, you weren't even the final product. Dr. Wu made it explicitly clear. You were merely a prototype. The real product was supposed to come later, backed by Blue's DNA to make the next Indoraptor docile, controllable, and marketable. You were just the rough draft, the stress test, the throwaway specimen built to prove the concept before manufacturing the actual line. Eli Mills put you on the auction block anyway, against Wu's explicit warnings, purely because he was desperate for black market cash. flesh. You were wheeled onto a stage in front of arms dealers and presented as the ultimate tactical weapon for the modern age, packing more lethal precision than any human operative. All those billionaires bid millions on you. They priced your suffering like a shipment of assault rifles or ballistic missiles. They reduced your tortured existence to a line item on a ledger. And when the auction collapsed into total chaos and you broke free, nobody ran to help you. They ran to save themselves from the monster they paid to create. Act 5. The Trap You Set. There is one specific sequence in the film that elevates the Indoraptor from a standard movie monster to an intellectually terrifying predator. Ken Wheatley, the mercenary collector, entered your cage believing you had been completely neutralized by tranquilizer darts. He wanted to yank one of your teeth as a twisted hunting trophy, but you weren't asleep. You were awake the entire time. You played dead. You mimicked unconsciousness. You waited patiently for him to step well within your kill zone, and the moment his guard dropped, you struck. That isn't animal behavior. That is calculated, psychopathic manipulation. You outsmarted an armed, veteran mercenary by weaponizing his own arrogance against him. The film's animation supervisor noted that they specifically wanted to project your accumulated rage, the psychotic fury of a creature born into a hellhole. You don't hunt out of hunger. You hunt for the sadistic thrill of it, a thrill built brick by brick through every electric shock, every conditioning cycle, and every lonely night in that dark cell. You didn't turn into a monster, they built you into one. Act 6. An Aimless Escape. When you finally broke out of that cell during the chaos of the auction, what did you do? You stalked humans through the estate's corridors. You invaded Maisie Lockwood's bedroom in a sequence ripped straight out of a classic gothic horror film. Director J.A. Bayona openly admitted he pulled inspiration from 1979's Dracula. You crawled along the roof rafters, descending slowly toward a sleeping child. You were the literal monster under the bed. But here is what no one stops to realize. You had nowhere to go. You had never seen the outside world. You didn't know how to hunt in the wild. You understood nothing about territory. You had no pack, and you had zero reference for how to exist outside that basement. All you knew how to do was fulfill your programming, destroy the target. Freedom meant nothing to you. It was just a longer corridor to stalk. Act 7. Killed by what you could have been. The final act of your biological tragedy played out high above the estate, on the glass roof of the display museum. That was where Blue confronted you, the creature who shared your bloodline, but given the chance to live a real life, you locked eyes. And when forced to choose, Blue didn't see you as a brother, she chose the humans. She chose the man who loved her over the monster that was conditioned to hate. During the chaotic clash, you lost your footing, plunged through the glass, and were impaled directly on the long, sharp horns of a fossilized Aguja ceratops skull in the display below. The film's visual effects supervisor summed you up in one chilling line. He's basically a psychopath. He has no mother, he has no sense of right or wrong, he's just broken. Not because you were born evil, but because you were never allowed to be anything else. What a wretched, miserable existence. You were engineered from a dead bone fragment pulled out of a dark lagoon. You were hatched in the shadow of a dungeon, educated through physical agony, conditioned to exude pure hatred, auctioned like a cheap crate of ammo, and executed in a fall before you even turned 2 years old. You were the dark mirror image of what Blue would have become if Owen Grady had never looked at her like a living soul. The difference between a loyal animal and a psychotic monster was simply who cared for who, and nobody ever cared for you.